going to do some board games today. I have several from the trekking line, and we're going to go into detail on each. We're going to do the setup, we're going to do basic gameplay. And if you have any questions or I'm not describing it in a way that makes sense, definitely drop it in the chat and I can show up close ups. So let's get started by showing you what we have here and then getting into each one. So first we have a trekking trivia game. This one is a little bit more of the basic question and answer type, and they call it a fun and educational guesstimation game. I'm excited to look at this one and try it out. I haven't played this one before. I've been doing national parks this year. It's kind of a goal that I've been having. And so I'm going to see how much I know. So we're going to save this one for last, and I'm going to ask some trivia questions after we set it up, and I'm going to see how much I know. I've been to 33 national parks now, 20 of them in the last year, so I'm excited to try this one out. Then we have Trekking the World. And this one is described as building your bucket list of destinations and take a whirlwind tour to visit them all. But hurry, your fellow travelers might just beat you there. So hopefully the gameplay will look like what I have up here on the screen. So that's what this one looks like. Looks like a general kind of collecting points for different activities, but we'll get into that one as well. And then we have Trekking the National Parks. So this one is more of a longer board game. And this one is Exploring America's Beautiful Lands. Trekking the National Parks is a spirited family board game that lets players visit America's national park in a fun and competitive way. So we're going to start with this one. We're going to look inside, do, what it takes to win, the general setup, and then kind of just the general gameplay. Since it's just me, I'm not going to be able to play the game. So it has kind of just general information about, I'm assuming, the people who made the game. And then we have our product catalog. It looks like the trivia game, which we're going to look at, Trekking the World, which we're going to look at, some more trivia, and then some just general other games. So before we get to the instruction book, it looks like it gives you more about the national parks. Nice little pamphlet. And then here's the instructions. So they also have a link to a how to play. So I'm just going to get into the basics of this game kind of as a review and kind of to see what it looks like. But I would suggest probably going to watch a more in-depth video or reading this manual yourself. I always loved watching videos. But let's get into all the pieces. States, different national parks, kind of in the general vicinity of where they would be located. All right, and then let's look at what the different pieces are called. Has a nice little sticker in there too. Always love that. All right, so these are all the pieces and parts. So it looks like these are park cards. So you can see the different national parks here. So let's shuffle those up so we can get started here. And these look like Occupy Major Parks. We'll read about what that looks like, but we have different ones like Yellowstone, Grand Canyon. These are a little different. Major parks. So there looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. Hopefully that's the correct number. Put those there for now. And these are called stones. That's not one. And it looks like you collect these. Actually, let's get out all these little tents. These are in there too. We'll see what these are here in a second, but looks like each player will get some. There's our next player. Seems like there's 4 players. Oh, maybe 5 actually. It's a new color. Yep, it's a 5-player game. So those are all our players. I assume they go on start. Okay. And these are Trek cards right here. So it looks like they have numbers as well as boots, tent, mountains, different shapes or icons, if you will, on them. So let's shuffle those up. All right, let's set up the game. So first it looks like each player can have one of these, and this is the things you can do on your turn. It also looks like it has a cheat sheet on the back here, which we'll hopefully get into once we read the instructions. So that's for each player. So let's set up the board. So what they want you to do is they want you to take all these stones, throw them in the bag so they're mixed up and you don't see what color before you place it. All right, and you're supposed to randomly draw them. them on all the little spots here. What national parks have you been to recently? Any interesting ones? Drop it in the chat. Recently, we just flew back from being out west, and we did a lot of those western national parks. All right, it looks like we have that. So after we do that, so these major parks, we're supposed to shuffle them and then randomly pick 3 of them and put them out. So we will do Everglades, Arcadia, and the Grand Canyon. All right, so those set up. We don't need the rest of these. Okay, so we shuffled these, so we need to place them right here, and we're gonna randomly choose 3 of them to start. There's our 3. So we've shuffled the track cards. And what you're gonna do is, I guess each player gets 2. So let's pretend there's 2 players here. We would deal the cards to the players. And you're supposed to keep those secret. So when you start out, you wouldn't show the hand, but this would be my starting hand. And then the remaining stay here, and you would place 5 cards face up. We're kind of tight on space here, so. There's the 5. All right. So these are what they're calling the most stone piles. So you have the most blue stones, green stones, yellow stones, red stones. There should be a black stone. Yeah, black stone. And then there's a second most of all the colors as well. So we're going to stack these over here. All right, so the board is now set up. The last thing here is the bear. This guy goes to the first player, and the person who recently visited a national park will go first. So let's say I most recently visited. I'm going to go first, so it's going to set in front of me so that we know whose turn started. All right, so what's the point of the game? The object of the game, to win, you have to prove yourself to be the most experienced traveler by moving around the map and scoring the most victory points. The person with the most victory points wins. So anything that looks like that right there, for instance, park cards have victory points, and so on and so forth. So that's how you win the games. That's the goal. And if you look here, if you're collecting the stones, if you're the most blue, you get victory points for that as well. All right, so how does it generally play? When it's your turn, you can choose two different actions. They can be the same twice or two different ones, and these are the choices. You can draw a trek card, which is this. You can claim a park card, which is this. And they say the way you claim the park card is by having these icons. So, for instance, if in your hand I have the canoe and the bear paw, which corresponds right here with the bear paw and the canoe, I would turn those in and I could purchase this card. So that's one thing you can do during your turn. The other thing you can do is move. And the way you move is by playing your trek cards. So let's say I want to move 4 spaces. I would discard my 4, and let's say I'm green, I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you land there, it says you cannot go backwards. You can only go forwards on your turn. But now that I landed there, I get to collect the stone. The other thing you can do on your turn is occupy a major park. And that looks like it means over here in these 3 red that they're always here. So for instance, if I want to occupy Everglades, I need 2 canoes. So in this case, let's pretend I have 2 canoes. Doesn't matter what the number is, just that I have 2 cards with a canoe on it. I place that, and when I land on, let's say I landed on the Everglades, we're just going to pretend, right there, corresponding 2 canoes, I now put one of my tents on that. And then at the end of the game, because my tent's there, I can get 5 victory points. And it says that just because my tent's there doesn't mean someone else can't. So if someone lands on Everglades that's yellow and they have 2 canoes, they can come camp as well. So that's how you play that. So, to review, it looks like you can do 4 actions. Draw a trek card, which is these. Claim a park card, which is these. Move by laying however many numbers, so that would be 7, and moving on the board. And occupy a major park, or it says camp at a major park. So you can occupy or camp, whatever you, same thing, on the board, which is this over here. Now, that's the general gameplay. And you're just going around trying to collect as many stones so that you can get, the most or the second most of the color so you can get victory points. You're trying to occupy these for the victory points. You're trying to collect these for the victory points. And that is the general play. So the only other thing is that when you occupy or camp on the major park, if you flip the card over, it has special powers, I guess you would call it. Park abilities. So, for instance, we have Arcadia. So let's say you occupy that. You can then make any of your 2 cards a wild card. And so on. So you would just read through these. Some of them are a one time and some are all the time. So that's a fun little addition. All right, so that is trekking the national park. And then, like I said, the goal is to get victory points and how you end the game. So if all the stones are gone, then the game ends, or a player claims 5 of these park cards. So you've purchased 5 of these cards, and you're the first one, that ends the game. And then you count up all your points, whether it be on these cards, or the fact that your tent is on here, seeing who has the most stones, second most stones, and then the person with the most victory points wins. Seems like a really fun game, because especially as I'm starting to go to more and more parks, it's just kind of a fun thing to trek around and kind of learn a little bit more, because each will tell you, like Great Tetons, it's in Wyoming, and it kind of tells you a little bit about each park. So it's always a fun way of learning new facts. All right, so I'm going to clean this up real quickly. If you have any questions or you want to see any of these cards up close, let me know in the chat. But if there are no questions, we're going to go ahead and quickly clean up. Another thing I like about this is how big the board is. Kind of doesn't fit on my space here, but there's something about a big board that just kind of makes family game night a little bit more interesting. Okay, so that was trekking the national parks. It says ages 10 plus, 2 to 5 players, and it takes about 30 to 60 minutes to play. So let's move on to the next trekking game. original one. This is a 2 to 5 player game, 10 plus age, and another 30 to 60 minute game. Again, we have pamphlets, information about how to play the game, how to learn more about playing the game, instruction booklet. All right, so let's set this one up. Again, if you have any questions or I'm not describing something the best, or you want to see a close-up of a card, just pop it in the chat and I will try to answer or show you anything I might have missed. So here we have the world. It looks like it also has each gameplay as well as how the game ends. So let's set this up. I do love a good quality game container. This one has a little lid on top. It just keeps everything in there. I really do like that. All right. Kind of looks like the other game, just a little different. So looks like there's suitcases that correspond with the people. So we'll set that up. 5 players. It's like the scoring pad. Looks like our destination cards. Quite a few of them there. Actually tells you a little bit about those destinations on the back. Kind of nice. And these look like the trekking cards in the last game, so let's shuffle those up. Not sure what each thing means, but looks like these cubes correspond with, if you have the most of each of these cubes, you get this card. This is what supposedly it's supposed to look like when we set it up. So let's learn about that. All right. First things first, what is the point of the game? The objective of the game is to prove you're the most experienced traveler by expertly moving around the map and scoring victory points. And victory points in this game will have this little kind of compass design on it. So that one's worth 10 victory points. If you have the most little blue tiles, you get 11 victory points, and so on. Okay, so let's set this up real quick. Now, it does give you instructions. If there's 2 players, you're going to have less of these cubes out on the board. If it's 3 to 5 players, it'll have them all. So we're gonna set this up as if it's 4 players. So we won't have to take out any cubes or do any special with that. But it is in here if you notice. You can see that there's special instructions for different players, amount of players. So, first things first. Take your person and your suitcase that matches, and each player will get that. now we have all the cubes in the bag. And the other thing we need to get are what are called souvenir tiles. It looks like they go right there. So we're gonna dig through the bag and put those out first. If you look, they have victory points on the back. So you're trying to keep that hidden so you don't know that that one's 5. I think I just showed you. Well, that's all it seems to have. There we go, there's the rest. One. As I find more, I'll put them out. So the next is to shuffle the 10 regional bonus tokens. Which we just put out. That's what I just put out. Now the destination cards are next. So we shuffle all the destination cards. We're going to move the players' suitcases. So we're going to place the first 4 destination cards face up. And the rest will be right here. There's the rest of these pieces are in here. All of them. So now with the rest of these are little victory point that correspond over here. We'll figure out what that means later, but you're supposed to put the 5s here and 3s here. And the 5s are slightly bigger than the 3s, so you can tell the difference. I think I'll save it set up like this next time. Alright, so now that we have that, and then next will be determine your journey cards. So these are journey cards. It suggests that if this is your first game, they recommend using the cards exchange rate and catch me if you can. So let's look what that looks like. Okay, so it says catch me if you can right there. And that'll go here. Face up like this. And then exchange rate, which is this one right here. And that goes up face up right here. So let's see what that means. So then we're going to do the Trek card deck. And this one, each person gets 3 to start with. So that would be my 3 cards there. And then you're going to place 4 cards face up. Okay. All right, so the board is now set up. So how do we play? Let's look. They have these cards here. I'll tell you the general gameplay. And it looks like it's in 2 phases. So phase 1 is move, and then phase 2 is choosing between these. So you can choose, first you move, then you choose one of these 3 down here. So moving, one last thing we need to do. Just like the last game, you just put randomly these all over the board. I'm only going to place a few, but kind of just get the gist here. Just random. So we're going to do this region completely. These 2 so we can kind of get the idea of how to play. All right, let's do those 2 regions. Just, you would fill out all of the spots, but for sake of time, we're going to do that. So now, phase 1, I'm going to move. And moving is just using your Trek cards. Say I want to move 1 space. So to start out, I'm placing my person on an airport, and I want to move 1. So I'm going to move here, and I get this piece right here, which looks like I place it on my suitcase. So some do's and don'ts of moving. You cannot use a single connection more than once in a single move. So if I had multiples, I can't go back on myself. And you can't go through a land or a location that's occupied by another player. So if this person is here, I can't go here. I could stop here with this person if I only had 1, but I would not be able to go through this person. All right, and it looks like here you have different victory points depending on what you collect. Let's say I've collected this. I would get this victory point. And so on and so forth. And if I have the most of a specific color, so let's say I have the most blue, then I'm going to get this card, which at the end, if I keep this the whole time with the most blue cubes, I would get these victory points. All right, so let's move on to phase 2 here. Phase 2, we're choosing if we want to draw 2 cards, so 2 face-up cards, or we can take a tour, which this option is you take a tour, you can purchase one of the 4 face-up destination cards. So just like in the previous game, they have icons here, and that's how you would purchase this specific destination. So let's say the yellow Trekker, and let's say I had this purple column. I would pay these two to discard pile, and I would pick up this card. Not only that, when you pick up these farther ones, that's what these tokens are for. So all the time, if you pick up this one, you get the 5 victory points plus this card if you have the right icons. And then it just moves down. And that one goes there. And again, the person purchases this one or this one, they get 3 or 5. Hopefully that makes sense. That was a little confusing to me there. Put it in the chat if it was something that was confusing. I'll try to explain, but so that is, going back to this card, that is one of the choices. So we can either pick these cards, the trekking cards up, purchase a destination, or third, go on a journey. So let's learn what journeys are. So, the journey, to go on a journey, to activate a journey, you have to have any 2 matching symbols on your card. So these are matching. So if I wanted to activate the exchange rate, I would play these 2 cards, because again, they're matching. Discard those to do this. And you're going to do the action. So we're going to, actually, let's do this one. Catch me if you can. So you reveal your 2 trek cards, and you perform the action on the card. This one says, move up to 4 spaces and draw 2 cards from the deck. So, if that's what I get, I can move 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4. I would get this token. And I would draw 2 from the deck, trek deck. There's some clarifications here on specific types. These ones just seem to be more basic, so it's straightforward. But again, this is just basic play, kind of showing you. All right, so that's the 3 things you get to do, or the 4 things you can choose from to do on your turn. You have to move, and then you have to choose one of these 3 options down here. All right. There's a lot of other things that you score at the very end of the game. And how does the game end? If 5 of these regions of the 6, there's 6, so 5 of them have no of these cubes left, the game ends. Or a player purchases their 5th destination card, the game ends. And then the scoring begins. And it looks like this kind of leads you through it. So you're going to count up who has the most souvenir tiles, which is this. So I have the blue one. I get my 11 points. If I happen to have... Oh, these are not yet. Disregard. So first you're going to count up how many full vertical lines you have. In this case, I only have the 5 because this one is not full. So I'd get 5 victory points, and we'd put that in the tally. Then you're going to go through and count up these. So if a player has 11, however many of these, that would go on here. Then you're going to get your destination cards. And any of these tokens that you might have picked up while purchasing them over there. And then the one with the most wins. So it's a little more complicated than the national park one. I would have to play this through once to fully understand, because there's some things I kind of understand, some things that are a little bit still unclear. If you've played this game before, put it in the chat, anything that you might suggest. But I think it's one of those games that now that you kind of get the gist of it, you can go ahead and play through once. So let's clean this up real quickly, and then we're going to get into the trivia one, which I think is going to be a little more fun and interactive for us to play along with. Because a few things that I didn't read through, like how do I get these? I think it's once all the tokens are gone, how airports work. There's definitely more out there to learn. But I think generally the nice thing with this is the more you play this game, the more nuanced you get to understand, and then you start to get your strategy. Because the first time I play a game, I never understand quite how the strategy works. But the more you play a game, the more you learn. So I think with this one, it wouldn't get that boring, because there's always kind of additional things that you're learning. Trekking the world. Again, I really do like the structure of these boxes. Sometimes board games get thrown around and it's hard to keep them all together. So I really do like the kind of just the makeup of this one. Move on to a little more straightforward game, but the National Park Trivia. This is a trekking brand trivia game. Looks like they also have one for the world, which would be fun. I think I'm gonna pick that one up off Amazon and see how that one runs. I think that one might be fun too. But let's look at this one. I'm going to grab a drink. Another category book. Some just various cards. And then we have the instructions. It has a little infographic, kind of give you some guesstimations on different things. I'm assuming that helps you with trivia. Some markers. Little whiteboards. And then it looks like the trivia cards. All right. Love a straightforward game. All right, so the point of the game, or how you win this game. The The object of the game is to answer. Players will be. The player with the closest answer wins points. The most points wins the game. So at the end of. If a player meets or exceeds the established number of points, which depends on how many players there are, the player with the most points is the winner. All right, let's set this up. So each player gets a board and a marker. So actually, let's do two, so we can actually look at this. Okay, so we have the answer and the questions. So you want to do that right. So the question faces you. All right, so how do we play up? So let's say it's two players. The points to win, the first person to 7 points wins. So again, that's what I'm referring to right there. So each round, the game is played. There's a reader who draws a card and reads from the card. I want to show the answer on the back. So the reader reads the entire card out loud, and then the reader who's reading this card needs to make their guess first. And so it's always going to be a number. Your guess will always be a number. And so let's try one. It says, the bald eagle is the national bird of the United States of America. They can be seen in several national parks, including Yellowstone, Zion, and Isle Royale, and often keep close to large bodies of water with abundant fish. So that's the fact. The question is, in inches, what is the average wingspan of a bald eagle? Anyone want to guess that? Throw that in the chat. But as the reader, I'm going to put in inches. What is the average wingspan of a bald eagle? I'm going to say 42. Anybody guess in there? Okay, so now that I, as a reader, have put 42 inches, everybody else makes a guess. So let's say player 2 is going to put 36. And then player 3 says he's crazy. He wants 64. All right? So what you do is you take all these numbers and put them from lowest to highest, like that. So once everyone has written their answers, the reader will you want to keep these secret until everyone has placed their answer. No guesses in the chat. Come on, guys. What is the wingspan of a bald eagle in inches? So then, as the reader, I'm going to read the answer since no one's putting it in the chat. It's 83 inches. So clearly we were all thinking way too small. But the person who wins, it's the closest without going over. So since this was 83 inches, which this person is below it, so they didn't go over 83. If someone had said 84, let's say someone had said 84 and it was 83, this person here wins. And they'll get this card. So this person right here would get this card. Everyone gets their cards back. pull another card from the card holder, but this time I must conceal the question side of the card and read the question labeled bonus on the back side. So, for instance, when I was doing this one, the bonus question's here, and that'll be the answer. So, I'm asking the person who won, so the person who did 64, they get a bonus question. And the bonus question is, what was the third national park to be established? Now, this is a bonus card, so it doesn't have to be a number, so only this person is guessing. What is the third national park to be established? Anyone want to put that in the chat? Anyone know? The answer is Yosemite. So if this person guessed Yosemite correctly, they would get this card. If not, if they got that incorrect, it goes back in the deck. And then you start over again. So let's try that one more time. Again, throw it in the chat if you know the answer. All right, so next question. Everett Townsend, a Texan-born deputy marshal, is considered to be the father of Big Bend National Park. His first venture into the Cholas Mountains in 1894 and was so inspired by their national beauty he vowed to preserve the landscape. So that's the background. Question is, in what year was Big Bend established as a national park? If you have a guess, throw it in the chat. What year was Big Bend established? I'm going to say 1915. And what this is helpful for, it kind of gives you the idea of things that happen. So for instance, the U.S. enters World War II, happened in 1941, 1912, sinking of the Titanic. It kind of gives you a guesstimate, so you can kind of like, well, if I don't know, maybe it happened around this time. So that's always kind of helpful. And then it gives you all 63 of the national parks here, just so you know. So 1915, that's my guess. So let's say this person picked 1960. Let's making up stuff now. This person said 1899. We're going to put them in order like that. Does anybody know what year Big Bend was established as a national park? 1944. So 1960 is over. 1915 is under, but it is the closest without going over. So this person, which would be me, I get this card. And then someone's going to ask me the bonus question, which again, you don't want to look at that. It's on the back side here. And the bonus question is, let's see, where, already I know my answer. I've done that one before. What type of glacier flows from land to sea is often responsible for creating icebergs? What type of glacier flows from land to sea and is often responsible for creating icebergs? I don't know the different types of glaciers. Does anybody in the chat know? No? Tidewater glaciers. I would not have guessed that. I didn't know. I would have just said something. So I don't get this card. It goes back in here. All right, let's see if I can get another question where some of these other infographics might be helpful to us. some questions, I'm guessing, that ask how many acres are things, how big is this park? And so if you look here, this kind of gives you like how big Central Park is in acres, how big Disneyland is in acres, how big the state of Massachusetts is in acres and square miles. So that's what this is very helpful for. Elevation in feet kind of tells you. So for instance, the Eiffel Tower is 1,060. So there's questions in here as well about the elevation. So, do we want to do one more? Since don't seem to have any questions. Let's do one more. All right. Climbing Denali has always been a big challenge. It wasn't until the expedition led by Hudson Stuck and Harry Cardston, who would later become the park's first superintendent in 1921, that the highest peak of the mountain was summited. In what year was the first successful ascent to the main summit of Denali? So, any guesses? In what year was the first successful ascent to the main summit of Denali? Going back to the question, or to the little information, it says it wasn't until the expedition led by Hudson Stuck and Harry Cardston, who would later become the first superintendent in 1921, that the highest peak of the mountain was summited. So I'm going to say 1917. No guesses? No guesses in the chat. Okay. The answer is 1913. All right, this is a fun, simple game, straightforward. Again, it doesn't really matter. You're just picking a number. So at the end of the day, if you don't know, it's not a big deal. You just throw a number out there. And it's a really fun way to kind of just learn more about the national parks. Which again, after going to 33 national parks in my lifetime, it's always fun to learn new facts. So those are the games that I have to show you today. If there's any questions about any of the games, throw it in the chat while I clean this last one up, and I'll kind of give you my overview and thoughts about these games. I think with this one, actually it'd be kind of fun to be a car game. So if you're on a road trip to a national park, I think you could just kind of have these in a Ziploc bag in the car and kind of just ask questions and learn facts. I think that's just fun. So that'd be another way you could use that game. All right. So those were the trekking games we tried today. We had the trekking the national parks, which this one was a little more straightforward. I kind of liked the way it was set up. I liked the fact that you could camp on spots, and it kind of played on the national park theme. Then we tried Trekking the World. This one was a little more complicated, and I don't think even right now, kind of setting it up and looking at it, did I break the surface of it. But I definitely want to play it a couple times to get like the strategy behind it. It is really fun because it does have those destination cards with information. It kind of gives you just an overlay of the world, which some people, learning about the world would be interesting about it. And then we looked at trekking the national park trivia. I think that any of these trivia games are just straightforward, easy to play, fun. Even if someone doesn't like board games, I think that they would enjoy this. They also have, which I do want to try, the Trekking the World trivia as well, which I think would be fun. Kind of a low risk, no big deal kind of fun game to play. So if you have, family who loves board games and loves to like play the intricacies of a little bit harder game, this one would be definitely what I would choose. This one makes a great gift for anyone who has been trying to knock off the national parks off of their bucket list. And then this one, I think it's always fun to learn more about the national parks or about our world in general. So I think this one's a nice simple game as a gift, and as well as if you do road trips or you're learning about national parks yourself, I think that would be a really good option. So, any questions? Anything I can show you? Anything you want to chat about with the national parks? If not, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you later, hopefully with a couple more board games. Bye, guys.